This is an ABC News special report. Trump and Putin, one-on-one. Now reporting from Helsinki, George Stephanopoulos.
And we are back now live from Helsinki, where President Trump's about to meet Vladimir Putin. That's the door. We see Sarah Sanders there, the White House Press Secretary John Bolton, the president's national security advisor, waiting for that first handshake between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, their first summit meeting of the two presidents. Of course, the White House now trying to say this is not a summit, trying to downgrade this to just a meeting, concerned about expectations here. The president has been trying to lower expectations as well. But John Carl, I was just saying to you, the president actually congratulated Vladimir Putin over the weekend. No word on those indictments of Russian intelligence. Congratulated him on the World Cup.
No word on that directly from the president. And George, the striking dichotomy here is that from the president's national security team, you hear very strong words about Russia. I interviewed his national security advisor, John Bolton, who you see there just yesterday. He said these indictments strengthen the president's hand. He said that it is hard to believe that Putin himself would not have known about his own government's efforts to interfere in our presidential election, and that he would strongly bring this up in the meeting. But there is absolutely no indication from the president's own words that he is truly concerned about this, concerned about the Russian side of this. He's lashing out at Democrats, he's lashing out at Robert Mueller, but he is not criticizing Vladimir Putin.
You've seen some Republicans, John McCain, Republican Ben Sasse in Nebraska, saying the president ought to cancel the meeting if he's not going to hold Vladimir Putin accountable. That's something that has also been picked up by Democrats, John.
Democrats across the board are saying that this meeting should have been canceled once that indictment dropped, once we saw in stark detail exactly what the Russians did to interfere with the U.S. election, stark detail what they did to hack into the emails of the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign. That's obviously not going to happen. So now the question is, will the president directly bring this up in the meeting? And as we've heard from his advisors, that is supposedly on the agenda. One real area of concern here, George, is that this first meeting is going to happen, as you mentioned, one-on-one. The two presidents, Trump and Putin, alone with just translators. None of the president's national security team.
And we're about to see the presidents right there.
Уважаемый господин президент, мне очень приятно встретиться с вами здесь, в гостеприимной земле Финляндии, в Хельсинки. У нас продолжаются постоянные контакты. В предыдущие месяцы мы по телефону говорили, встречались несколько раз на площадках различных международных мероприятий.
We have phone conversations and physical meetings. We met on the sidelines, different events, international multilateral events.
Ну, конечно, настало время поговорить обстоятельно о наших двусторонних отношениях и по различным болевым точкам в мире, и достаточно много для того, чтобы мы обратили на это внимание.
And now it's time to talk in detail about our bilaterals, as well as some of the hot points worldwide. There's quite a number of these for us to make note of and discuss them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, Mr. President, I'd like to congratulate you on a really great World Cup, one of the best ever, from what everybody tells me, one of the best ever, and also for your team itself doing so well. I watched quite a bit. In the United States, we call it soccer, and I watched quite a bit of it, and I watched the entire final and the semifinals, and they were really spectacular games, but it was beautifully done. So congratulations on that.
Я смотрел за играми, у нас в Соединенных Штатах эта игра называется футбол, сокер. Смотрел на финальную игру, так и полуфинальную игру. Обе были очень интересны.
Most importantly, we have a lot of good things to talk about and things to talk about. We have discussions on everything from trade to military to missiles to nuclear to China. We'll be talking a little bit about China. Our mutual friend, President Xi.
У нас есть огромное количество тем, которые нам надо будет обсудить, очень интересные темы, начиная с таких вопросов, как торговля, коммерция, военные вопросы, также вопросы, связанные с Китаем, с ядерной политикой, поговорим также о нашем друге Xi.
I think we have great opportunities together as two countries that, frankly, we have not been getting along very well for the last number of years. I've been here not too long, but it's getting close to 2 years, but I think we will end up having an extraordinary relationship. I hope so. I've been saying, and I'm sure you've heard over the years, and as I campaigned, that getting along with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing.
У наших двух стран есть огромная возможность для того, чтобы наладить наши взаимоотношения. На протяжении нескольких лет эти взаимоотношения не были плохие, где-то около 2 лет. Но я думаю, что есть возможность, чтобы эти отношения между нашими странами стали чрезвычайно хорошими. Я во время своей предвыборной кампании говорила о том, что ладить с Россией сделать очень хорошо.
And I really think the world wants to see us get along. We are the two great nuclear powers. We have 90% of the nuclear, and that's not a good thing, it's a bad thing. And I think we hopefully can do something about that, because it's not a positive force, it's a negative force. So we'll be talking about that, among other things.
Мы будем говорить о наших ядерных потенциалах. Мы две страны, которые содержат более 90% всех ядерных арсеналов, и это не является чем-то хорошим. Это не очень хорошая вещь, поэтому нам надо делать все для того, чтобы улучшить наше положение по этому вопросу. Я думаю, мы будем говорить непосредственно о вопросах, связанных с ядерной политикой.
And with that, the world awaits, and I look forward to our personal discussion, which I think begins now, and then we're going to meet our whole team. You have quite a few representatives on that, and we all have a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll come up with answers, most importantly. It's great to be with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
And there you see that handshake between President Trump and President Putin. Now they're going to go behind closed doors, one-on-one, just translators, for the first part of this all-day meeting here in Helsinki, Finland. Pretty remarkable comments there from President Trump starting it out. The two big events over the weekend, that indictment from Robert Mueller of 12 Russian nationals for interfering in our election, and of course France winning the World Cup. President chose to congratulate Vladimir Putin over the World Cup, did not mention at all, Terry Moran, Russian meddling in our elections.
He did not. He promises he will. But this is a sign of just how seriously President Trump wants to rebuild the relationship with Moscow. Most U.S. presidents have come to meetings with Russian or Soviet leaders, speaking for the West, speaking for what used to be called the free world, with the nations of Europe and many other nations at their back, having heft in those discussions, because it wasn't just the American president. America first sometimes maybe means American alone in that room, because President Trump spent the last several days pushing back against the European Union and other close allies. And so here he is, clearly both men wanting to get on some kind of common terms that they can start work on their agenda, which includes Syria and Ukraine and nuclear disarmament. That's close to President Trump's heart. And maybe somewhere on that list, the 2016 election, and what President Trump's own Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, says the United States is under attack now, present tense, continued Russian cyber attacking of American voters and American elections.
Maybe hearing more about that at the joint press conference with both leaders later. One of the reasons Europeans so wary, as Terry mentioned right there, not only that tough NATO meeting last week, but also another tweet from the president over the weekend where he referred to the European Union as a foe. Tara Palmieri has been covering that for us, and that has so many European leaders anxious, Tara.
That's right, George. The European officials I spoke to this morning said they were shocked and outraged. It's unheard of for an American president to compare the European Union to Russia and China, especially here in the Baltic region. They are extremely anxious as there's Russian military operations happening all the time in the sea behind me in Finland, and they just want to make sure that President Trump doesn't give any concessions to Russia publicly or privately on Russian aggression in the region, the annexation of Crimea. They see their own security as linked to that in Ukraine, and they want to make sure that they can rely on U.S. military and NATO forces to protect them.
Okay, Tara, thanks. David Muir here with me, also in Helsinki. I want to go back to that footage we just saw of the president and President Putin there. And David, I was struck by the body language of the two men as we watched them in those first few minutes right there. President Trump leaning forward in his seat, a very laid back. Vladimir Putin kind of taking in everything the president had to say.
Yeah, very different body language from both of them. You see President Trump goes to sit down first and then looks over at Vladimir Putin. Obviously, they waited for the handshake for some time, and you heard him go down the list of the issues that he wants to tackle with Vladimir Putin: trade, military, nuclear power, China. He said a great opportunity to restart this relationship that he tweeted overnight has been horrible for years, blamed the U.S. for that foolishness on the part of the U.S. Dan Coates, you know, Terry mentioned that he said the U.S. is under attack right now, a cyber attack. He also said the warning lights are blinking red, is what he said going into this summit, and no mention from the president, at least now, of meddling going into this.
Nothing publicly right there. John Carl, for a summit, there not a lot of preparation on the United States side. Normally you have a series of meetings of deputies, months of preparation by everyone in the national security bureaucracy. This one put together relatively quickly. The president is likely to be coming in much less prepared than Vladimir Putin.
That's the concern. That's the concern we've heard Democrats express and some Republicans as well. And it was extraordinary, I thought, George, to listen to the opening comments, a lot of diplomatic niceties, compliments of Vladimir Putin. Not only was there no mention of the election meddling, there was no mention of any of the other critical issues we have concerns, including Crimea, interference in Ukraine, and of course, Syria.
Syria as well. They want to get North Korea on the agenda as well. Okay, the leaders now in that presidential palace in Helsinki for a one-on-one meeting. Going to be followed by a working lunch. We're going to cover it all day long. But for right now, we're going to go back to regular programming. For many of you in the East Coast, that's Good Morning America.
This has been a special report from ABC News.